a lot of fights, a lot of fun. It's exactly what I want, and it's how I like to live. We had some fights on Friday night. Antonio Bigfoot Silva knocking out Travis Browne. Impressive performance from the heavyweight there.
So he looked good.
He looked very good. He picked up a win. He got knocked out by Cain Velasquez in May when he made his UFC debut. This is a guy that was very successful in Strikeforce. He beat up Fedor Emelianenko when people didn't think that was possible. The way that he beat Fedor, very impressive. He came into the UFC and fought Cain Velasquez in his first fight and got destroyed. But that's what happens when you fight Cain Velasquez. He's number 2 or number 1 heavyweight in the world right now, depending on who you're asking. So that's what happens with Cain, but he was able to take out Travis Browne on Friday night, and it was a very impressive performance. I had him ranked number 8 in the world at heavyweight, and I think he's pretty much, that's where he is. And it was a great performance from Bigfoot, and now on Saturday night, we've got more Brazilians, other guys named Silva. Not Antonio, but Anderson Silva will be fighting.
Wow, that's the man, isn't it? Yeah.
Exciting stuff. He's going to be fighting on Saturday night in his home country of Brazil. You might remember he took this fight on short notice after Jose Aldo pulled out due to an injury. Aldo was supposed to defend his featherweight title against Frankie Edgar. This happened like 3 weeks ago.
Right.
UFC scrambling for a new main event, and Anderson Silva volunteered to fight at 205 pounds. Now he's the 185-pound champion.
That's a big jump.
Yeah, but he's done it before.
What's his natural weight? Probably somewhere in the middle, right? Between 185 and 205?
Yeah, I think he probably walks around when he's not training to cut weight at about 210, maybe 220. Maybe if he's particularly heavy, but he's not like a 205 fighter that walks around at 230, 240, and then slowly cuts to make 205 come weigh-in day, the day before the fight. Stephan Bonner, his opponent, he's a natural 205er. He's a big 205er as well, and he can take a punch. So it'll be really interesting to see how Anderson matches up with Stephan Bonner. Everybody picking Anderson Silva to win. Nobody really giving Stephan Bonner a shot. But, you know, you look at the matchup. You look at the fact that Anderson Silva's moving up in weight, and he's fighting a guy who's got just a tremendous chin and can really take a beating. It's going to be a tough fight for Anderson Silva, and it's going to be a fun fight to watch. And it's always great to see Anderson in a fight.
I was going to say, next to John Bones Jones, is Silva the number 2 MMA draw in the world for pay-per-view, potentially? Would you say that? Or would you declare that? I would GSP say, is up there.
Yeah, George St. Pierre is the number 1 pay-per-view draw in MMA.
Wow. Really? Over John Bones Jones?
Yes.
Wow.
And Dana White has said that the top pay-per-view draws in MMA are John Jones, George St. Pierre is the number 1 draw. John Jones is getting up there. Anderson Silva is up there. Rashad Evans' pay-per-view numbers do really well. And Chael Sonnen as well, because he had such a huge number with Anderson Silva. Now he's looked at as one of the biggest pay-per-view draws in mixed martial arts. So those 5 guys were talked about by Dana White in Toronto after UFC 152 as being the top draws in MMA. But, yeah, George St. Pierre, he's the number 1. He is the number 1 pay-per-view guy for the UFC, and he's going to be fighting on pay-per-view November 17th, which I know everybody in Montreal is looking forward to, as it'll be at the Bell Center. And I know the UFC is looking forward to as well, as they're going to make some money on that night. GSP is big-time money, but Anderson Silva is a huge draw as well. I'm curious to see how he's going to draw on Saturday night, considering his opponent.
And also the time in the year. You got baseball playoffs going on, NFL, what the buys would be on a, I guess there are some fringe guys that would maybe not tune in because they're watching other stuff.
I guess, but, really, if you're any kind of MMA fan, I think you're going to want to watch Anderson Silva, but I was actually talking about it with a friend of mine last night who was not that interested in the pay-per-view because, he's fighting Stephan Bonner. Everyone expects him to walk right through Stephan Bonner. I don't necessarily think it's going to be an easy fight for Anderson Silva. Everybody was expecting John Jones to walk right through Vitor Belfort. Vitor almost submitted him in the first round and took a beating,
right,
and was only finished in that 4th round. He put up a serious fight.
He injured him, too.
Yeah, he hurt John Jones in that fight. He almost won the fight in the first. So I wouldn't write off Stephan Bonner. I think he's going to give Anderson Silva a tough fight, and I look forward to seeing it. And I think that a lot of people will be interested in seeing it, but it's not going to be the same type of pay-per-view numbers as he did when he fought Chael Sonnen. I mean, that fight was 2 years in the making. That fight was a lot of hype and a lot of trash talk behind it, and there was a championship at stake as well. But this is going to be a big fight, and a big fight for Brazil, as Anderson Silva is a hero in Brazil, and the fight's going to be taking place in Rio de Janeiro. Also, the godfather of mixed martial arts in Brazil, Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira, Big Nog. He'll be fighting Dave Herman on the card. So a lot of great Brazilian content. And I'm excited to see Anderson Silva fight on Saturday night. It should be a good fight. I'm going to pick Anderson Silva to win, obviously. But I'm excited to see the fight. I wouldn't write off Stephan Bonnar. I think he's a very tough dude and could have put up a real fight and, shock the world. As Anderson Silva, I don't know what his mind frame is going into this fight. I don't know how serious he's going to be taking it. And I know Stephan Bonnar is looking at this as the biggest fight of his life. He's at a point in his career where he's about to retire. This is probably going to be his last fight, win or lose. So he's putting everything on the line. He's got
nothing to lose.
Lose and everything to gain. He could be the guy that beats Anderson Silva, and that's what he'll be remembered for. So it's a huge night for Stephan Bonnar and a great night for MMA.
Dave Simon joining us from Ringside Report Radio, Wednesdays and Fridays here on TSN 690. Dave, I know you wanted to get to a former pro wrestler trying his hand in MMA, and you just showed me a couple seconds there. It was kind of funny.
Yeah, Dave Bautista went at it last night in Providence, Rhode Island. The former WWE champion made his mixed martial arts debut at 43 years old.
Wow.
Defeating...
Gutsy. Give him guts. Give him credit. Yeah.
Yeah, give him a lot of credit for the guts that he's got to step in there and want to compete in mixed martial arts. He's not a guy that had a fighting background before he went into pro wrestling. He was a bodybuilder. He got into pro wrestling, started watching MMA, started training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and decided, hey, maybe I can try this MMA stuff. So he opened a Jiu-Jitsu gym. He's got a Gracie gym out in Tampa. Started taking it more seriously and decided that this was the right moment for him, and he got a win last night, a TKO victory over Vince Lucero. And, this guy, Vince Lucero, wasn't the jacked-up specimen that Batista is.
This guy, if Homer Simpson was an actual person, he'd have the physique of this guy.
Yeah, and, I think you're dissing Homer a little bit. He's not that big. But, yeah, this guy was a little bit chunky, but he took the fight to Batista. This was a guy with experience. He'd fought 44 times before, so he knew what it was about. He'd won 22 and lost 22, and now he's got 23 losses. But he was taking it to Batista, pushing him up against the cage. He landed some punches. It looked like he wobbled Batista at some point. And to Batista's credit, he was able to take those punches.
Yeah, after you showed me, after the guy started to taunt him, that's when it...
Yeah, and the guy had him pushed up against the fence and was just taunting him and playing to the crowd. And the referee separated them because the guy wasn't doing anything against the fence but pushing his belly up against Batista and keeping him there. So the referee separated them, and Batista landed a very nice takedown. A lot of power, a lot of force. Was able to keep Lucero on his back. He eventually took Lucero's back and pounded him out for the TKO victory. So, once he got Lucero on his back, he looked very good. So, I was impressed with Batista. I think he's going to fight again. He said that he was interested in doing it. So, it was fun to watch.
What organization is this?
It's the Classic Entertainment Sports.
Out of what area?
Providence, Rhode Island.
Right, you said.
I think it's like a Rhode Island, Boston type of thing, New England area. David Loazo, Montreal fighter, was in the co-main event and also got a victory, a TKO in the first round due to a cut from a vicious elbow laid down by David the Crow Loazo. So it was a fun card to watch that I wouldn't ordinarily watch. But hey, you got Loazo on that card, you got Dave Batista.
Yep.
It was pretty good, and it was good to see Batista get a victory. 43 years old, former pro wrestler. I could see him going back to pro wrestling at some point, but we'll have to see.